This is it. This is it. I'm going to spend the next 3 hours minus the tea break probably just saying that over and over again in different ways. Maybe answering questions which might come in many forms, but really underneath every single question that anybody could possibly ask about this, there's always the same question, and that's, is this it? Really? Are you having us on? Hello.
Hi.
Didn't see you back there. You've had your hair done.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Occasionally I do that.
Ah, me too. I've also had my hair done for this afternoon. So really I can't believe I've written a book of over 200 pages on this, when basically every question really comes down to, is this it? And every answer comes down to, yes, this is it. This is it. If we could get, this is it in its entirety. This is the entirety. This is the totality. This is the universe. This is the cosmos. It's all here. Whatever is arising is the totality. An absolute entirety. So yes, this is it.
So how can you know that and I don't?
I don't know it. I don't know it, and you will never know it. For oneness knows it. Oneness reports on it. And the sorry individual sitting here and sitting there will never know it. The individual never sees this. It's just seen. And if the mind collapses around that suggestion because it doesn't make any sense, all I can say is, well, it's tough. The mind collapses around everything about this because none of this makes sense. I'll start with what is probably the commonest metaphor for trying to talk about this. Now, it's not surprising that so many people who've talked about this, so much that has been written about this, it is put in metaphor, because it is, after all, impossible to understand this directly. It's also impossible to understand it metaphorically, but metaphor can maybe help. And the commonest metaphor maybe for this, which I'm sure everybody here has come across, is the metaphor of the ocean and the waves on the ocean. And so we see the waves on the ocean, and they may be, they may not be, they may be incredibly disturbed. They may be very, very choppy indeed. There may be a great storm blowing on the surface of the ocean, but we know that underneath that, in the depths, the ocean is unmoved. And so we have these two things, apparently. We have the unmoved ocean, and we have the waves on the surface. But of course, equally, we know that we don't really have two things. We have one thing, because we know that the waves are the ocean. We know that the waves are the ocean moving, the waves are the ocean being stormy and choppy, and none of that makes any difference at all to the unmoved ocean in the depths. And I think that probably is about the best. I have tried many, many metaphors in my talks, and that traditional one is probably still the best. If we think of the person, then where there is a strong sense of a person, where there is the knowing that I am an individual, I am an autonomous individual living in a world of separation, then basically what I am experiencing are the waves. I am only experiencing the waves. And some of the time, just as at the seaside, some of the time that's quite pleasant, if the waves are kind of gently undulating and the sun is shining and so forth. But by God, we all know that sometimes that can get incredibly uncomfortable when the waves are choppy and I end up feeling extremely seasick. The journey of being a person, an individual, a vulnerable individual in a separated world with a life to live that I am responsible for. My God, that gets a pain at times. So for a person, the waves are so intense, and by waves, I mean everything that's experienced: thoughts, feelings, perceptions of what is apparently going on in an apparent world that I find myself in. All of that going on is the waves. And really all we're talking about here, if somebody like me sits here and says, well, this is it, or offers talks on non-duality, or liberation, or awakening, or whatever word we want to use, all I am talking about is when it can be seen, when it is known, or when it can be seen, that there is also the stillness of the ocean. That's all that, certainly all I mean by awakening and liberation, and I've never read a word that anybody else has written about it that's made sense to me that means anything else. So what we're talking about here is the possibility that can arise, that as well as experiencing the sometimes calm, the sometimes choppy waves on the ocean, there is also the possibility of seeing, or I could say of reconnecting, because first of all we were born into that, the possibility of seeing the silence of the ocean as well. That's really all we're here, that's all I'm here to talk about. And I don't know what questions might start flying around, but that's all I'm here to talk about. That's liberation. That's awakening. That's seeing oneness. That's seeing non-duality. The realisation, the direct realisation. Realisation is a difficult word because it can imply thinking in the mind, and that's not what I mean by it. The direct realisation, the direct living, the direct seeing, that all of this apparent difference is just the waves on the surface of stillness. This is stillness moving, this is silence making a noise, this is nothing appearing as everything. And the problem for a person, if there is a problem for a person, I'm making an assumption there, but if there is a problem for a person, that's what at the bottom all problems come down to. That the person has lost contact with that. Now we could say, if you like, we could say that we are born with complete contact with that. We are born into absolute oneness. We are born into non-separation. But of course we're born without self-consciousness, so we're born without any consciousness of that. There, you could say, if you like, that for the young baby there is oneness, but oneness isn't known because self-consciousness hasn't developed. And then the problem is, the trick is, who the hell designed it like this? That as self-consciousness develops, as the baby, if you like, becomes a child and becomes aware, in the sense that we recognise awareness, that brings with it separation. So it's like it really is a catch-22. It's like we can only know oneness when we can't know oneness. And once we've developed the kind of self-consciousness that can recognise oneness, we can't recognise oneness because we've lost contact with it. Because it's the very development of that self-consciousness, the consciousness, if you like, of the individual, the consciousness that I am an individual, which brings with it the sense of separation, that severs me from oneness. Now I'm aware that I'm an individual, and I'm over here, and Mum is separate from me, and Mum is over there, when oneness has been lost. The sense of oneness has been lost. Oneness is never actually lost, but the sense of oneness is lost. And so now, now I am doomed to walk the earth in separation. In other words, I've been thrown out of paradise. I've been born into paradise, but I don't know I'm there. God, what a trick. What a terrible catch-22. I'm born into paradise, but I don't know I'm there. I'm in heaven and I don't recognise it. And then with a sense of separation, I experience myself as having been thrown out of paradise. I experience myself now doomed to walk like a hungry ghost around the streets of Notting Hill Gate and other places. feeling vulnerable, feeling separate, feeling threatened, feeling paranoid, feeling anxious. And so that's, if you like, when the great game starts, because here I am. When there was oneness, there were no needs to be fulfilled, no threats to be warded off, no vulnerability to be protected, no others to be kept at bay, to be kept at arm's length. But now that separation has arisen and I'm an individual, all of that may now be the case. So the great game has started, the game of separation, the game of problems which have to be faced, and also rewards which may be gained. And so from then on, life is a great balancing act of an apparent individual seeking to avoid pain and seeking pleasure, rewards, seeking to avoid suffering and seeking for pleasure. And we're on the merry-go-round, we're on the great wheel of fortune, the hamster wheel, the wheel of karma. I mean, however, whatever particular story or metaphor you want to apply to it, but the metaphor of a wheel is a jolly good one, as again most of us know. Going up, going down, going up, going down, ecstasy, despair, happiness, depression, confidence, anxiety. So there's the dilemma, and we may spend the rest of our lives trying to fix that dilemma. And the awful thing is we can't. What a bummer. There's an awful lot of things we can fix, but the one thing we can't fix is that dilemma. We can't really fix the dilemma. We can make our life better and more comfortable in all sorts of ways, some of which we might even talk about this afternoon, and some of which are jolly intelligent, and some of which are bloody stupid, but nevertheless we still do them. You know, but the one thing we cannot fix is to find our way back into paradise. Relevance whatsoever to anything that I think I am. All of that sense of being a vulnerable, separated individual with a life that they're responsible for can just fall away. And of course the final joke, the biggest joke of all, which is why there are quite a lot of reports of people laughing uproariously when liberation is seen, the final joke of all is that when the sense of separateness falls away, I discover that I had never been thrown out of paradise after all. I was always in paradise. I have spent 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, maybe 80 years searching for a paradise that I never left. And that's the greatest joke of all. That's what can cause so much mirth when this is seen. When it's seen, as I started off by saying this is it, when it's seen that this really is it. And because this is it, this is already paradise. And what I've been looking for all my life, I can't even say that what I've been looking for all my life has been right up against my nose, because that is too separate to describe what I'm trying to talk about. What I've been looking for all my life is my nose, if you like. I have always been that which I've been looking for. I have always been looking for oneness, and I have always been oneness.